here. And I don't necessarily need to do anything particular, but did you all introduce yourselves at the start of the last interview?
I introduced myself and brief, just gave names.
Okay, want me to do that? Okay. Hi, I'm Paige Smith, the mayor. And well, you know how bad I am at this. And this is Administrator Wynn. I have these, this is our trustee Check, trustee Schwartz. She's also Mayor Pro Tem, trustee Hunter and trustee Heck. And we are missing two other trustees. Mr. Valentine is in Costa Rica and Rick Stelter is working. So with that.
We also have our clerk.
Oh, sorry, clerk and deputy clerk. I never introduced them at meetings, so sorry.
I like sitting in the background. You introduce me, people talk to me.
Do you want to do the lead in? Or would you like me to read?
Trustee Hunter had a really good first opening question, which is, tell us about yourself.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely love to. Well, thanks for your time. So Ryan Jarvis and Laurel, obviously my colleague. So we're with JVAM. We're a firm based here in Western Colorado. We work out of Roaring Fork Valley, so we have an office in Basalt. We have offices in Glenwood, Basalt, a very small one in Aspen Highlands up in Aspen, and then we have some folks in the Arkansas Valley, so Buena Vista and Salida. We are, I believe, 18 lawyers at the moment. And so that is, and we really do everything, full service. I lead our water team. So I'm the water lawyer, Laurel, and I tag team a lot of water stuff together. So we work closely together on water, and that's why she's here as well. As far as our water works, I've been practicing for 15 years, approximately 15 years, focusing on water. Been based in the Roaring Fork Valley that whole time. And I focus my practice in, well, I don't know if you know the water divisions, but there's Division 4, which is the Gunnison Valley, Division 5, which is the Colorado River Basin, and Division 6, which is the Yampa White, and then Division 2, which is the Arkansas. Our water practice is very, it's quite varied. So we represent municipalities. You know, I represent the town of Basalt, for example. We represent, you know, there's a lot of HOAs, for example, across Western Colorado that have their own water systems. And so we represent folks like that, special districts or quasi-governmental entities, such as there's a Bluestone Water Conservancy District, or the Kobe Water Authority, which is an amalgamation of the Colorado River District and the Bluestone District. So in addition to those kind of institutional clients, we represent developers that, you know, trying to develop water supply systems for wherever they're trying to develop their land, private property owners, folks buying property, you know, someone's buying a ranch. You know, everyone's always told they have senior water rights. What does that mean in the context of what you're actually buying? So that's kind of broad strokes what our water practice is. So a lot of water, helping folks design, implement water systems, help them protect the water rights they have, help them understand their systems. So that's kind of our water practice. And then we do litigate, you know, sometimes, unfortunately, water issues can't be resolved through discussions or negotiations. Sometimes you have to go to court. So we do litigate water issues as necessary across the Western Slope. So that is generally about JVAM. And like I said, we have other folks that do various other things, a lot of real estate, civil litigation, estate planning, things like that. We really are. It's probably easier to say what JVAM doesn't do, which is criminal law, family law, immigration, than say what we do. Other than those few things, we have folks that kind of cover.
It's the exact old fun stuff.
Thank you. Want to start?
Sure. Please describe your experience addressing issues regarding water rights, water and sewer infrastructure, and water availability for residential users, or the pertinent water issues affecting the Western Slope. And this question is worth 20 weeks.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think you largely just described most of my work. And so we, you know, for example, I'll take the town of Basalt as an example. You know, they're a municipal water supplier and they have various water rights. We just finished an augmentation plan through water court just last year. they had developed a new section of town, essentially, and needing water rights to service that part of town. So, we helped them identify what was necessary and develop a plan, and then get it through water court and come up with a plan that's going to work for that town long term. And so, I guess we do that kind of stuff all the time. We also do a lot, I mentioned there's a lot of HOAs in rural areas, subdivisions that have their own water system, right? If you're not in a town, you gotta figure out how to service your water or your homes. And so we represent a lot of rural, I guess, subdivisions that have central water supply systems. Oftentimes they're based on wells, sometimes they're based on springs. It's the same deal, identifying how many, for example, residential units per lot are going to be allowed. We're being allowed ADUs, we're not going to allow ADUs. How are we going to water people's lawns? How much lawn irrigation is going to be allowed? And identifying that, developing it. Maybe they have the water rights to do it, maybe they don't, and we got to go out and get them. Maybe we need to develop an augmentation plan for various reasons. And I guess the last thing I'll say is we also represent CMC, Colorado Mountain College. And I guess most recently they have a Spring Valley campus, which I think might be their main campus. It's outside of Glenwood Springs. And they've been going through some growth and helping them identify their current portfolio. Does it get them where they need to be in terms of lodging for students, really? And if not, what do we need to get them there as kind of a long-term strategic planning? So I think like I said, that largely describes what I do most of, or what we do a lot of the day each day.
Thank you. Want to go this way?
Sure.
Be next.
Okay, question number 2. Tell us about your most contentious negotiation and how it was resolved. In addition, please describe your experience with alternative dispute resolution. And this is worth 10 points.
It's interesting, the most contentious. We have quite a few contentious discussions as lawyers, and trying to identify the most contentious is difficult. And I also don't want to identify any existing matters and get into stuff. Maybe I'll start with the second part. So alternative dispute resolution is something lawyers, especially anyone that litigates, crosses all of the time. Usually courts, if you're in any civil litigation, doesn't matter what you're talking about, the court's going to mandate usually mediation. As before they'll even set a trial date, you got to go to mediation. So we mediate all the time. And so very common practice for us, which is essentially a voluntary process where you have a third party neutral in the middle, right? And everyone kind of tells that person their story and what they're trying to do. And then that person's job is trying to do shuttle diplomacy between the groups and see if they can reach a resolution there. It's a very effective tool. In part because it gives the parties the authority or the ability to resolve a dispute on terms they're okay with, right? The only way mediation works is if everyone agrees, right? And if you go to court, for example, you have a judge or a jury, you've now put the decision in a third party's hands, and you may or may not like what they're going to say. And so I think mediation, we do mediation all the time. Arbitration is another kind of alternate dispute resolution. Maybe think of it like a private trial. You pay a person to kind of be the judge or judges, and you put it to them. A little bit less common, especially in the law world, but we do that kind of stuff all the time. And I'm a big advocate of mediation, just because, again, I think, especially in the water world, it is very rarely a zero-sum game. Sometimes there will have to be a winner and a loser period, and that maybe you do have to go to the judge. Oftentimes, if they work hard enough and think hard enough and are willing to have communications, there is a solution to be had. And that is usually a faster solution, a cheaper solution, and it just takes a little bit of will to get there. And I counsel my clients, you should give this a chance. Is maybe the best way to resolve it. I guess the most contentious, In trying to make sure I don't step on confidences here and name any names. So I'm not gonna say names or identify particular matters. There are oftentimes in water cases, you get opposers, and it's the same thing. Someone's very protective of the water rights, very protective of whatever interests they're trying to protect. And in no way, no how are they going to let you do what you're trying to do. And you have a client that needs to get done what they're trying to do. And then see, sometimes you have, she's the lead attorney in a case right now, which has how many opposers in the Uray case? 20 opposers down in Uray County. And it can get very contentious. And I think per my kind of earlier comment, what you have to do is really look at each person on the other side and evaluate what are they really asking for. There might be a lot of bluster or a lot of angry words, but really, what are they looking for? What are they asking for? And how can we get them what they want or close to what they want while also achieving what we want, right? And then you start the hard work of coming up with creative solutions, identifying solutions, opening up a dialogue. It doesn't really matter how, you other side can be very entrenched in your position, and I get it, but we can certainly have a conversation about how we can address that and the ramifications of if we can't address that and where that leaves you, and how maybe that's not the best position for your client, or if you're talking to someone who's represented. And I think just going one by one, and I think and kind of really listening and hearing what they have to say, thinking about it, and then being creative. And like I said, there are rarely times where you can't craft a solution. And maybe you thought of something that they really haven't thought about, or an alternate resolution, or why don't we do this, and that gets you what you want. And people are receptive to that. No one wants to be stuck in disputes forever. And so that has been my experience over the last 15 or so years. Is it's hard work, but you engage in that effort, it often pays dividends.
I do want to ask just one follow-up question. What's your experience with negotiating with CDPHE?
Yeah, I saw that in your RFP. So quite a bit. I have had various of my clients have quote unquote community water systems, right? As you know, what that triggers. And then I saw something somewhere about Rudy groundwater under the influence. I think you guys may cross that bridge. Maybe you're still crossing that bridge at the moment. And I represent Copper Mountain Metro District. And we had a Rudy issue, and we ended up having to go to water court and come in. We came up with a resolution and we fixed it. But yes, I am familiar, have dealt with them on numerous occasions in various instances. So, and then I was telling Laurel on the way here, actually on a little cabin, Pitkin, kind of weekend cabin, and we were deemed to be part of a community water system. Our whole kind of side of the mountain, it was just these kind of off the grid cabins. And so we had to go through that whole process dealing with them and coming with a solution to there. We got an enforcement letter, essentially, parade of horribles will fall on your head if you don't do what we tell you type letter. And had to work through it. And that was in, my personal capacity, not as a lawyer. So I would say certainly a fair amount of experience working with them over the years.
Next. Paonia has been described by a previous water attorney as the most complicated system in terms of water rights in Colorado and perhaps the entire Western United States. What is your experience with advising municipalities that have consecutive water systems and balancing the need to protect the water utility with the needs of the consecutive systems? And this is a 25-point question.
Highest
It's
rated.
the highest one.
That's great. I'll make sure it's a good answer. So I read that, and to be honest, that's very intriguing. Anytime someone says it's the most complicated system in Colorado and or Western United States, as someone who deals with complicated issues all the time, I want to know what the system is and how it works and what's going on. So obviously, we do represent municipalities, or I guess town of Salt, and these other entities, CMC, HOAs that provide water systems. Some of them are quite complicated. You know, the town of Salt has, I want to say dozens of wells, springs, ditches, augmentation water out of root eye, multiple augmentation plans, dry up credits, consumptive use credits, quite complicated accounting, water use accounting, reporting requirements. So certainly have quite a bit of experience. I mean, again, once you get to a certain level in water, you're not just filing a diligence application to continue a conditional water rate or something. It all gets real complicated real quick. And we work on that stuff all the time. Now, these consecutive systems, as I gather, you all have, I don't know if the number was 23, but it sounds like you have these kind of, you deliver water to a point, and after that, there's an HOA or a company or subdivision or whatever takes the water and works with that, past that. I'm trying to think if I have an exact analog to what you guys have, and I don't know if I do. But I don't know if it's much. I mean, obviously, that's an additional complicating factor, I'm sure, that works into everything. But I'm not sure it's much different than providing water to the apartment building and then them having to deal with it or whatever. So I will say I don't have direct experience.
Problems with the apartment buildings too.
Oh, okay. Well, sorry, I didn't read that in the RFP. So okay.
We looked at each other, just kind of like, oh,
So, but yeah, again, like I said, I think the same principles apply, the same legal standards, legal issues apply. I think once you get to a certain level of complexity, and again, we certainly deal with that on a daily basis.
Thanks. I have a follow-up to that. What is your experience with renegotiating contracts and agreements with consecutive systems that may not want to reopen their 50-year-old agreement?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, I don't know if I have an exact analog to what you're talking about. I will tell you, Fred, I guess I was just thinking about this. CMC has, they developed we're part of a group that developed a wastewater treatment plant, which then had return flows, which then are split pursuant to very complicated agreement between the original funding parties. And, that agreement is 30, 40 years old, has been amended and renegotiated a few times. So I think, again, it's a similar issue, dealing with, maybe you have an antiquated agreement, maybe you have a vague, well, maybe even no agreement, which it sounds like maybe we have here. Or you have an agreement that's vague or ambiguous on certain terms that needs to be clarified. And, we negotiate deals and agreements, ditch sharing agreements, well sharing agreements, pipeline sharing agreements, easements that have water use issues all the time, and deal with those issues. So I would say in the contractual negotiation sense, it's something we do very, very often.
I think like in the water world and the land world, not having agreements is almost more common than having agreements, especially in towns like Paonia or the Roaring Fork Valley, where you had mostly ag land and now it's getting developed and people are moving in, and you're now having to analyze a system that might have operated on handshake deals for a really long time. So we deal with that in our world all the time, where people might move into an area and they're like, land has passed down to a generation that's now trying to subdivide or figure things out. And we're like, there's nothing governing how any of this is working. And you have to bring the parties to the table to figure it out. Especially if you're dealing with CDPHE and, you're like, we're not going to have water if we don't come to the table and figure this out together as a community.
Follows. Okay, so you're right. We have 23 consecutive systems. We have 32 springs that make up our spring complexes. All of them have varying levels of water rights. Our most senior goes to 1899, I think, was our most senior water rights. And we don't take everything that we could. With the 23 consecutive systems, we may have 11 or so with some semblance of agreements. One of them has a very good agreement that, well, it's not good for us, but it's an agreement. It's actually in writing. Where the others are more like they've handed us their bylaws and said that's our agreement. But all of them within their consecutive system status have referenced our permit with CDPHE. So there's something, it's just we don't have any expectations written down in an agreement. So that's going to be a heavy lift moving forward, is bringing them to the table to negotiate.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we provide water to double our population outside of town. And that's really the way these have it. So,
Yeah, and I think, and I don't know if that was a question.
it was more information, but yeah,
I'll just say, yeah, I mean, I think that's the perfect example. And then just to echo what she said, the Western Colorado, small population, lots of water, not a pressure, everything's copacetic, everything's fine. We do it as Grandpa did it. And then more people, less water, less snowpack, and you feel these stressors. And then you have all of these situations that were it just existed and everything was fine. And then now something's not fine. We need to work it out. And I think what the solution is, get those folks in the room, make sure you understand their goals, they understand their goals. The town needs to protect its water system, period. And so the town's interests are paramount. And I think once you open the line of communication and folks understand, those differences become more like common interests. And it doesn't mean that everyone's going to get everything they want, because that's just not how the world works. But push comes to shove, I think there's probably solutions there. These folks need their water, and they have their houses, and they have a lot of interest and value in their homes, and they need to get their water too. And so I think I think that's how I would approach that solution to that problem.
can I ask another follow-up?
As far as I'm concerned, you're just fine.
Okay, well, this is really a question for how you're operating how you're approaching negotiating with the 20 proposers in Ray County. How are you approaching it?
So I'm representing a water users association, and so we're applicants with several other applicants, and so the co-applicants, we all have our own specific wants and needs. And there's some things that some opposers might want that I don't care about, but the other co-applicants care about. So we're all kind of trying to figure out the common solution. And if it doesn't work, we do have to go to water court. But really what I'm trying to figure out is what my clients truly need. And kind of like with negotiations, I think about walking down every rung of the ladder to see where everyone can find agreement, and then go up from there and see where can we move to where we can get what we want, but you can also get what you want. And there are things that maybe some people want that you can give them and you don't care about.
Sorry. Thank you.
A sense of urgency can, at times, compromise thoughtful decision-making and a thorough process. Can you think of a few examples when this has happened, and what was your role? For instance, like in court, or something when circumstances change or clients change their wants or stated needs, for example.
Mm-hmm. And the first part of that was the decision making is kind of pressured by
being there, needing to have a decision made.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously the best case scenario is we get all the facts, good time to consider the facts, look at the law, make a reasoned decision, write a memo or something, and everyone to think about it and talk about it. And that's unfortunately not how it works. And so you try to set up the system to achieve that. And if it doesn't happen, then you just have to you got to jump in and do the best you can Obviously, in the court scenario, anytime you're in litigation, things move so fast. And I was thinking about a 6-day trial. Actually, I think it started about this time last year. Things happen so quickly. They call that witness that you didn't expect them to call, or their expert is talking about something you didn't expect them to testify to, and you just need to kind of you got to do the best you can, right, and make the best reasoned decision you can at that point. Obviously, you do, and if you're not in the litigation world where the judge is waiting for you to do something or he's going to move on, there are oftentimes times to gain more time, right? Hey, the other side is telling me that if we don't do X by 5 o'clock, they're going to do this. Well, hop on the call and say, are you really going to do that? We need some time to think about this, especially if you represent a public body. I have a board that makes decisions. I don't have decision-making authority. I need to talk to them. And there's ways to try to gain some space, not always possible. And then you gotta do what you can in a situation.
Well, that was sort of a follow-up question. I wanted an example of when that might have happened. Would you?
So you don't have to do a follow-up question.
Right, I know, but I was just saying that you sort of answered the follow-up question there, unless somebody else has another follow-up.
I have a follow-up, kind of related to things that you've been saying. If we can't find agreement with these 23 consecutive water systems, then it goes to water court?
It depends. So and again, this is where it gets real complicated real quickly. Water court deals with water matters. So how much water you're allowed to take out of your spring or out of the ditch, and what the priority is, and if there's use limitations. If it's a contractual type dispute, then that might be regular court, which is just district court, trial court. And again, depending on the factual circumstances, the water court may also have jurisdiction over that. But I would say, just from a very broad perspective, if this is some sort of contractual dispute obligation argument, then you're probably just a regular court or regular judge.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah.
Well,
So last time too. And I don't like it, but I didn't rewrite it. It's nobody was anyway. Can you describe an example? It's a feel-good question. It's only worth 5 points. So can you describe an example of a time when your legal opinion helped bring a positive outcome?
Yeah. So I don't know. I'll take the example of the most recent augmentation plan that we were able to get through water court. Right. So what the town of Basalt did is, I don't know if you guys have been to the town of Basalt recently. They have a brand new riverfront park, and they have a pretty cool park over by the town of Basalt, by the Basalt Library. They do summer concerts there, and it's a pretty cool little area next time you pass through the Roaring Fork Valley. But that was the goal, was we needed to develop a water supply for this area, which is and I live in Basalt, so I'm a little biased, I think, but it's a really cool area. And it brings a lot of community members out. It's packed in the summer. And I think, I was there from the beginning of kind of hatching the idea of how do we do this, and then implementing it, and then arguing with people about why we should get what we want, and then getting what we want at the end of the day. I mean, it filed 2017, and we got a decree last year, so it took a little bit of time. But we got it, and I think our office is right across the street, so we get to see people out there, their kids running around, and I think that's one of the reasons I think people, and I can always speak for myself, I got into this business to try to help people, and as a water lawyer, that's an example of do that.
I actually like that question.
Do you? It kind of throws people off.
Yeah, I think it's a good question.
like Ryan said, we both practice law, and especially this area of law in this state, because you can really make an impact for people's lives and make sure that they have a sustainable, reliable source of water for themselves or their town. And if we could do it for free, I think we would. We do it for free a lot when we can. So yeah, like he's put the town of the salt. Nice seeing that river park, walking around like the new duck pond. Nice.
We had a duck situation.
Oh.
This afternoon.
A duck situation.
Duck situation.
I don't do that to lots.
Okay, question 7, 15 points. Please think of a time when you had to redo a work product project because it didn't meet standards. What was the context?
Yeah, it's a hard question because we take extreme pride in doing it right the first time and being stewards of the client's funds, right? Because if we, and so it's really hard to think of a situation because we don't take something like that very lightly at our firm, you know, because clients pay us to do the project. And if we didn't meet expectations, then the things that happened was we didn't get all the facts on the front end and make sure we understood what the client wanted. And we went and launched on some project and that's not what they asked for. Or we didn't, you know, even if someone says they want something in the first instance, you gotta like, you gotta say, okay, well, like, let's just make sure I'm hearing what, I'm gonna repeat what you told me and suss it out a little bit. And so if, I think I've had situations where, you know, the tone, you know, they wanted a really aggressive letter, and then they get the aggressive letter and they say, well, I want to strike a more balanced tone. And so there's like a rewrite, but I don't think that was a function of not meeting their expectations. It was maybe a function of after having thought about it and digested a little bit, the desired change, which is totally fine. But, and I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for you because again, and I'm not trying to sound conceited either, but we worked really hard to do it right the first time. So.
Yeah, there's a follow-up question for it. You know, it's kind of hard to answer, but what methods do you use to check for quality, especially when you have to meet tight deadlines?
Yeah, it's a good question. So first it's really vital, and it's not always possible. You build in time to make sure you have time to think about things. And I'm a big fan of, if you have something really important, a motion or a really important letter or something, you write it, you set it down, you go home, you come back in the morning, you reread it, and then you shoot it off. Because I find giving it a little bit of time. And if you don't have the day, if you don't have the evening, you know, go to the bathroom or something and come back, print it out. I'm a big fan, and I know I harp on this all the time. Write it on your computer, print it out, and then read it in paper. I think that's a good exercise. We also, I was talking about, we have 18 lawyers. We also have 3 paralegals and some legal assistants as well. And so we will ask them to proofread stuff, get a second set of eyes on it. Hey, this is a really complex thing. Can you read this and tell me if you have any idea what I'm talking about? Because if they don't understand it, the judge may have no clue either. So those are some of the strategies we use. And again, if you just have a deadline that you had to have it done in 30 seconds, you just got to get it done in 30 seconds. And
I hate those.
I think working as a team, we have built-in redundancy too. Like I might draft something, I'll go through the whole process, print it out, read it, and then I'll give it to Ryan and be like, can you also look at this and see if I missed anything or talk about it? So rarely do we miss.
May I ask a follow-up question? So you mentioned a couple times you have 18 lawyers plus paralegals. Is that within the entire firm? So they're working on things other than just water issues?
yes,
Gotcha.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we have Laurel and I, you know, focus our practice on water. We also have a couple of associates. We have one paralegal who's the water paralegal. She's very, very, very good at what she does because it's kind of a specialized practice area. And we have some associates who also do water work with us, but they also do some
Thank you.
All right, so I've got the last one with a couple follow-ups, and this one's worth 15 points. Please describe how many municipalities you are personally representing at this time, and will you have any scheduling conflicts that would require others to serve in your place?
So municipalities, per se towns, I represent the town of Salt. I think that might be our only per se municipality. Represent a lot of, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of kind of community water providers. So whether that's Colorado Mountain College or any number of these HOAs, or water conservancy districts. So that's the first one. I guess scheduling conflicts, I wouldn't anticipate them. I mean, I guess obviously board meetings, again, if we get advance notice, far enough advance notice, we're pretty good. And I will tell you, it'll either be me or Laurel participating in whatever has to happen. You know, we live obviously just in the Roaring Fork Valley, so I don't know how you guys, if you prefer in-person meetings, it's not that far of a drive. If you prefer, you know, Zoom meetings subject to in special occasions, show up in person, you know, we're happy to have all those conversations and do what, you know, the important thing is that you guys are informed and you have what's necessary to make informed decisions. And so however that needs to get communicated to the board, we're happy to do.
So as another follow-up to that, what is your typical turnaround? Let's say you would to receive a call or an email from the town. How quickly do you expect a response?
Yeah, great question. This was drilled into me by my mentor that the number one complaint about lawyers is non-responsiveness. And so if I see, if I can pick up the phone, I'll just pick it, and I recognize phone number, I'll pick it up. Because I think that's really important. People want their lawyer, you know, people have problems, they want them solved as soon as they can. So we make a very big effort to be extremely responsive. I would say if someone leaves a message, I try to get back to them that day. Obviously, it's not always possible. We do not let things languish, period.
Great, thank you. And our board of trustees, our regular meetings are on the second and fourth Tuesdays of every month. Does that present any kind of a conflict or problem?
No.
And that would just be when we would meet you all there.
So there is, and actually trustee Check was right, there, the follow-up question for question 4 was changed. I didn't ask it. Any lobbying experience?
Yeah, funny you should ask. Yes, so I represent Iron Mountain Hot Springs, and my colleague at our firm represents Glenwood Hot Springs, and there is so we recently have been lobbying state legislators, the governor's office, and DEO folks, or SEO, I guess, state engineer's office, Division of Water Resources in Denver, on a bill. I just got news that it passed the Senate, so passed the House, passed the Senate today, so it's going to the governor. So the governor is trying to spur development of geothermal energy development in the state of Colorado. Seems like a noble goal. There is a coalition of hot springs that are very concerned because, you know, you drill into the hot spring aquifer in Glenwood Springs. I don't know what you do to Iron Mountain Hot Springs spring, right? It comes out of the ground 150 degrees. So we developed, and so the governor introduced a bill through the Division of Water Resources. We proposed amendments, had a lot of very, very contentious phone calls and negotiations with very high up folks in the Division of Water Resources, and we're able to negotiate amendments that were then passed through the House, and then I just learned today passed through the Senate. So we do have experience doing that. We are using a lobbyist, a formal lobbyist in that effort. So we do have a relationship with a lobbyist in Denver who is a water kind of specific lobbyist. And
Can I ask a follow-up, which is actually about your bill? Does it involve ECMC as well? Is it
Yeah.
considered part of the oil and gas?
so yes. And so they've kind of reorganized who has authority over what. And so shallow geothermal resources, so at 2,500 feet or less, and then there's a temperature threshold, I think it's 211 degrees, is Division of Water Resources. So that's shallow. Deep geothermal, more than 2,500 feet, hotter than and 211 degrees is ECMC. And so they've created that, just that dichotomy, and then they've tried to create, I guess, they standardize or fast track, depending on who you talk to, the permitting process for these folks. And so, but yes, ECMC is very much involved in that effort.
We do APDs and things like that for a geothermal well, like they would any other.
Yes, yeah. And
It's has to do with,
What's your, yeah,
you know, what we have, gas development right outside of town. So, and geothermal is a potential as well. Thanks.
she was also compliance. It's state of Wyoming.
Oh, do we environmental stuff? Is that, so now, did we turn it over to say what questions you have for us? Are we ready for that part?
Sure.
We got through all the questions? Okay. What do you have for us?
So I know the town has had previous, I think, water lawyers, and I was just curious what is, and maybe none of you worked with them, I don't know, but I was curious what worked well and what maybe, I guess what worked well, maybe didn't work well with your previous experience.
She retired. Sherry Paonia.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, you know, she had an opportunity because we didn't have a formal agreement with her. But we gave her the opportunity to also respond on this sort of queue, and she did not. I think she is enjoying retirement. But one of the big things that she did give us was what I call our water rights compendium. So she had done all of the research on our water rights, put it into something that is easy to, well, it's easy to read if you do water rights, right? So, and also created charts for us to follow. Put most of the agreements that we did have with our consecutive systems. Some of them actually gave us water rights in return for domestic water. You know, so that's what she provided for us, and that's really our foundation for how we've gotten our funding. We're in the middle of improving our water system. Received a $9.7 million loan that we're working on $3 million principal loan forgiveness.
It's a lot for Paonia.
It is.
It's a big deal.
So-
So where we are, it's a big deal.
Yeah, and so that really was the foundation. And now we're at that point where we've got to finalize these agreements. We've got to formalize them. We need to know expectations, what they're expecting of us. And quite honestly, we really don't want to take on their hundreds of thousands of dollar issues with their consecutive systems. So we kind of need that level of protection as well.
No, it's great to hear that Sherry did that. Yeah, like my experience with any type of institutional client is they sometimes run into problems when you have a great lawyer, a great water lawyer that's really knowledgeable board members, and then there's turnover. And you're like, well, no one knows anything. And so regardless of what happens with us, developing some sort of institutional knowledge library is, and something maybe you've already done that, but goes a long way for us.
The lack of more formal agreements with the consecutive water companies are evolved because some of the agreements were as old as they are, and then things change and the agreement didn't change. So it's a problem.
Well, and I don't want to, and again, this question is you don't have to answer, you're like, oh, we don't want to talk about it, but it sounds like you have a lot of deals that need to be negotiated with a lot of folks. Any sense on if you're expecting, cooperative discussions, or are we concerned on some, entrenched negotiations?
There's a reason for the contentious question.
Yeah.
The question of contention. So we're trying to approach this in more of, my background before I got into this was as an investigator for Department of Child Services in the state of Indiana. We did something called a child and family team meeting. And so it's really a, hey, no harm, no foul, let's get around the table and kumbaya, right? Well, let's talk. And that's kind of our approach. We want to get our water companies or our consecutive systems around a table, find out those issues, let them know what our specific issues are, and then start working to negotiate something that works for everyone. And that's really what our next steps are. That first meeting, I don't want attorneys there. Second meeting, I won't need some attorneys there. So I think that's kind of the path that we're going. So this is the next critical step in getting that done.
Really to try to be collaborative, because we all want water.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that we talk about a lot is that a lot of people don't understand that you can't use general fund money for your enterprise system with water and sewer and for us trash. So that often is, people are surprised about that. And that has to come from fees or grants and loans.
Yeah.
So that, and I think when they understand we're all paying for the system, and we need to make sure that we have a system we can afford to pay for.
For sure. And I would, before I ask the next question, I agree. Keep the lawyer not involved as long as you can. Build a rapport, because the moment someone says, "Who are you?" I'm a lawyer. My experience is it can shuts down a little bit. What is, and maybe you just answered this, what is the number one water issue the town is facing?
The water moratorium. So, right? I mean, am I speaking out of turn?
I think it's a combination of both
Yeah,
the
I
water
think
moratorium and then the
the
consecutive water
Consecutive
systems.
systems, I think, are
Yeah.
huge also.
Because we're at least on the path for addressing the water moratorium. It's really cleared out laid out what we need to do to make a decision on it. And we're in progress with it. We're having the studies being done. Like, yes, it's an issue, but I think we're taking all the right steps. But I think this is a bigger issue because it really does impact so much of the wider community. And I appreciate what you said earlier, like with drought, et cetera, the stressors that were just kind of underneath the surface, they're rising. And yeah, I think it's a big deal. What'd you say? Oh, okay. I do have one other question that's not on the agenda. And that is, based. You can't hear it with a straight face. It's a joke. Okay.
We'll answer seriously.
Okay, let's, with climate change, which I feel like it's happening, and sea levels rising. And we really think we need to be thinking ahead and have a maritime lawyer.
So I'll tell you, I went to law school in Seattle, and so I have some folks in my Rolodex. And we can figure that out.
I'm just kidding. Not a funny one.
So my previous post was in Florida, and we were at a beach community, and that really was an issue, the sea level rise, and people didn't understand why they couldn't build right on the beach. And
That's
sure.
why, that's why they moved to County, sea level rise.
And I hate to say this, but we have to stop the interview just because we have other folks coming in.
Super appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time, and if you have any other follow-up questions, you guys know at least Ruben knows my number. And
He kept us pretty well informed.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for coming in person. Appreciate it. Are you guys ready to? We just, query, is everybody ready?
He has cleaned up more than he could.
Well, thank you for coming here, and if you'll introduce yourselves, and then we'll each introduce ourselves.
My name is Sarah Dunn. I'm with the law firm of Balcom and Green.
And I'm Chris Geiger, law firm of Balcom and Green.
Thank you. And you don't know it, but you have a marker. You have a thing there. What's that called?
A nameplate.
A nameplate.
Oh, very nice. Thank you. You guys are professionals.
It's really cool.
We've got a deputy clerk that's like on it for you. On it.
Don't mind me, I'm just the town clerk. nothing.
Yeah, we'll get to you. So I'll just start, and then I'm Paige Smith, I'm the mayor. And then I'll just let everybody introduce themselves. Well, no, I will not. First, I'm going to say Stephen Nguyen is our administrator, and our clerk, Sam Better, there, and you know Ruben, our deputy clerk. Now I'll let the trustees speak for themselves.
I'm Walter Check.
And I'm Kathy Schwartz. I'm the mayor pro tem.
Lucy Hunter.
Okay, I'm just here.
So with that, do we want to start in the same order?
This is your show. How do you want to do it?
Why don't I go first this time? So we have, 8 questions. And each question has a different score associated with it. And we'll tell you what the score is that goes with the question, just so you kind of get where we think the priority is. So, yeah, what's that? Oh, I forgot that. Oh, sorry. Please tell us about yourselves. Did we do that? Yeah, we did.
I can start. So, I grew up in Colorado. I went to school down in the San Luis Valley, and then I did college at Colorado State University, and then law school at CU Law. I graduated from CU Law in 1998. I did 2 years with the Division I Water Court. I was a law clerk for my first year and a water referee the second year. Then I moved over to Aspen, and I was with a boutique water firm that did only water. I was there for 3 years. And I left that firm because I really felt constrained. So if a client came to me with a real estate question or wanting to know if they could set up an LLC or something else, we'd have to refer them out. And so then I went downriver to Balcom and Green that had a little bit broader practice. Plus they were more my style of clients. You know, at the firm in Aspen, you were representing Kevin Costner and Irving Azoff and They needed another pond complex, and I represented a lot of the smaller, kind of mom and pops, the farmers, some developers. And so the practice at Balcony Green was really kind of more of what I enjoyed doing. So I have a background in agriculture. We have a farm in southeastern Colorado. It's 13 sections, and it's just my two sisters, my dad, and myself, and a part-time hired man. So we work hard, but it really helps you appreciate those that do. So, and then I've been with Balcony Green since then. And my practice is pretty varied. It focuses on water, do some real estate, a little bit of land use with that. I've helped with towns rewriting codes like the 1041 regulations for counties, that type of thing. I represent both water providers. One of the largest ditch companies in Colorado, the Fort Land Canal Company down in southeastern Colorado. They have over 150 miles of canals and 3 reservoirs, and probably like the town has aged infrastructure. And so that's been a real challenge in trying to help get them funded and get those things upgraded and trying to prioritize that. Yeah, and I have a dog.
I was born in Kansas City, Missouri. I moved to Colorado Springs with my family when I was 5 years old, which would have been around 1977. I lived in Colorado Springs near the Air Force Academy until 6th grade when I moved to South Metro Denver, near the Tech Center. I went to undergrad at Colorado State University, roughly the same time that Sarah was there. We did not know each other at that time. I got a degree in technical writing and journalism, moved back to the metro area, and I was in construction management, building homes near Parker for a couple of years. But I knew at that point in time that I wanted to go to law school. And so I went to CU, I went to law school in CU Boulder, graduated in 2000. And I had made up my mind at that point in time that I wanted to leave the Front Range. I was tired of living in the big city. And I had a definite interest in water rights work by that time already. I was already fascinated by the history of water law and how that system of property rights had developed in the state of Colorado. And so I moved to the West Slope, and I found a job at Balcony Green in 2000. I started out doing a varied practice, even though I had chosen the firm because I was interested in the water law. I started out doing whatever I could do. I did quiet title actions for real property. I did step-parent adoptions. I pled out driving under the influence cases and any other manner of civil collections and things like that. And over time, continued to develop my practice and do more and more water work. And so I would say today that 80% of my practice is based in pure water rights work, adjudication of water rights, assisting clients in acquiring, buying, selling, developing water supplies. And a significant portion of that is associated with government clients and helping government clients develop water supplies. And interestingly, over time, I've discovered that I really enjoy working with public boards. I think that it's one of the most rewarding client relationships because it's constantly a challenge. The relationship with a public board, the board is the client, in its official role of representing the entity. And so you have one client relationship, but you have to have a relationship with each one of the members of that board in order to effectively understand the client's interest and provide good service to the client. And I find that to be a lot of fun. I really enjoy that challenge. And so over time, my first public client was a conservancy district that operates in the Warren Fork Valley that basically provides legal water supplies to individual citizens so that they can develop their own individual water systems. And that was my first public client. And over time, I really decided that I liked working with public boards, and I've endeavored to try to develop more public clients. And now I think I have 5 or 6 I work with regularly, and I think it's just a lot of fun. I really enjoy public boards. But I'll move on from there. Over time, I've had the opportunity to work with, government and municipal clients, ski areas, ditch companies, developers, and also some conservation-oriented groups in the water arena. I also still do a fair amount of real estate work, real estate transactional work, and I keep myself involved in other areas of law because I don't want to become too narrowly focused. I find that it's important to keep some breadth of practice because it's important just to kind of keep cross-pollinating and remain flexible, mentally flexible. And so I try to do that as much as possible. I have 2 children, they're both college aged. That's kind of me.
I would like to mention Scott Grosskopf, who is our third partner and the remaining owner of Falcon and Green. He had a meeting with one of his boards tonight up in Meeker, so he wasn't able to come to you, but he wanted to let you know that.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. So I will just start out with our first question. This one is a 20-point question. Please describe your experience addressing issues regarding water rights, water and sewer infrastructure, and water availability for residential users or other pertinent water issues affecting the Western Slope.
Okay. I've been working in water rights adjudication for 21 of my 25 years of practice. I've practiced in water courts in the Colorado River Basin, and the Gunnison River Basin, and in the Arkansas River Basin for approximately 21 years. A lot of that work has been focused on developing new water rights portfolios that often involve complex plans for augmentation, wherein you've got to develop replacement water supplies to allow the development of new junior water rights that otherwise would not be able to operate dependably in priority. Throughout that experience, I've learned that it's very important to build relationships with local administrative officials. And I found that's the best way to represent clients. And so that's one of my primary focuses when I'm working on a new project. I try to reach out early and talk to the division engineers in the districts, in the basins, and try to utilize their knowledge and experience so that I can, best represent clients and accomplish the client's goals. You repeat the question?
Sure. Please describe your experience addressing issues regarding water rights, water and sewer infrastructure, and water availability for residential users or other pertinent water issues affecting the Western Slope.
Sure. So my experience is most of the 24 years have been almost exclusively in water. And I represent a number of water providers in the lower Arkansas. These are small communities similar to yours, like the Bristol Water and Sand District, May Valley Water Association. They are more typically well-based because they don't have, the springs and surface rights that are as plentiful over here. But we have quality issues, we have infrastructure issues. I've dealt a lot with CDPHE on compliance issues, permitting. I've practiced in every water basin except the San Luis Valley. That would be Division 3. Their groundwater is so complex, and I grew up there, so I kind of figured, since I left, I'm just going to leave it alone. I represent both, providers, and especially in the Arkansas basin, similar to over here, is that the ag and the small communities kind of go together, right? And so it's important that you have that sense of community. On our resumes, we probably don't have as much litigation experience as you're going to see on the resumes of the Front Range firms. And it's not because we can't do that, but because we believe that, especially on the Western Slope, that it's collaboration that's important. And so our goal is to try to keep our clients out of litigation. I think the water bar is exceptional because we are very collegiate, we are very cooperative. You know, you might be across the table from each other one day, and then the next day you're representing clients that have the same interests. I should also disclose, I think that we did put it's not directly related to this, but I have represented in some limited representation, the Lone Cabin Ditch Company. They contacted us to help advise them. They have a NRCS Salinity grant that they share with the Turner Ditch Company. And so they asked us to help them with some of the administration issues on that, as well as looking at their bylaws to give them some recommendations on how they can update those. So I haven't seen anything in that that would seem to be a conflict, but that was something that I'd ask the town to do.
I think we're shareholders of Turner Ditch as well.
Well, that could be, but they also are using part of our sewer plant property, 30+ acres, as an offset for the work they're doing on their ditch, wildlife offset. But you may know more. We've not heard from them because they apparently haven't gotten everything they needed through the Army Corps of Engineers. So they haven't started any of the work they were going to do. So I did see that in your and thought, okay, but that it's, so we have an interest in what they're doing, but it's a little bit peripheral because we're not stopping what we're doing at the sewer plant. We're just kind of letting them, you know, have it as a placeholder.
And so as far as our experience with sewer infrastructure is that our third partner, Scott Grosscup, represents the Roaring Fork Water and Sand District. And so they do run a municipal sewage system. But really I don't have anyone, most of my clients are all on individual systems.
And I'm not sure sewer is really, I mean, we may have some issues with sewer, but right now it's potable.
This is everything to do with water, so.
Yeah, so it could be sewer too, but mostly just that's the connection with Paonia and Turner Ditch.
And one of the complexities that I've been faced with recently is down in the lower Arkansas, these small water providers, they have high levels of uranium and other, you know, radionuclides. And so they're waiting for a pipeline to come down from Pueblo Reservoir. And so we're looking at how do you blend that water and how do you take this high quality water into this old infrastructure? Because a lot of those pipes are going to leach. You know, you've got your lead and copper compliance, you've got all of those issues. And so we've been doing a lot on trying to set up water authorities that are regional authorities that will help to manage those and how to upgrade these smaller systems like the city of Rocky Ford. That's the case. May Valley is the case. Town of Wiley.
Getting back to sewer and water systems, there's a lot to unpack in that question, so I thank you for repeating it. We work with the largest municipal water supplier on the Western Slope, and so in that regard, we have insight into contracting around engineering projects, information technology projects that are pertinent to running, designing, repairing, maintaining municipal water systems. We have some insight into some of the issues that go into blending of municipal water supplies. Security issues surrounding the acquisition, securing of chemicals. So we have some general insight into the operation and security issues, contracting issues surrounding running a municipal water operation. I've been involved in some work regarding discharge permits. The Colorado Department of Health and Environment, which also has some intersection with municipal water supply operations. But otherwise, generally, you know, for 21 years, the majority of my practice is involved in water rights, adjudication, development, protection, and acquisition in one way or another. And a substantial portion of that has had a connection with municipal government operations. So.
You know, another thing that you do for the larger water, that's the water provider, right? Is looking at extending service. They get service requests all the time. And it's really working with the engineering department to determine whether or not they can serve that property. And sometimes it's whether they have a large enough line, sometimes it's, you know, elevations. There's a lot of reasons that go into that. And it's difficult to deny. And we've had cases where they've come in and applied year after year and and telling them that, you know, no, it's no this year and it's probably gonna be no next year and on and on. So we do a lot of that. We have 3 associates with our firm that also work in water. We really value public service, and so we try to hire associates that have some experience outside. We have one that's starting in June, who's working for the Army Corps of Engineers. His job was in Portland, but he was living in Denver. And so under the current administration, that was not okay. So we've hired him, so that's really gonna give us a leg up, we think, with our Army Corps of Engineer permitting. We have Ryan Scheit, who worked with the MSHA Court, the Mining Health and Safety, back in Washington, DC, for 2 years before he came to us. And then we have Andy Hall, who just came directly from law school. So, and then Blake Peterson also works in water. We have 12 total, I think, employees at Balcom and Green. Like I said, we have 3 owners, 4 associates, soon to be 5, and then 3 paralegals and a receptionist. So
I think another thing that we probably have a lot of experience with that's relevant to the town of Paonia's operations is that a lot of the clients that we assist have systems that originate or extend across federal lands. Whether it's U Water Conservancy District, Telluride Ski and Golf, and the town of Mountain Village, a number of others that I could rattle off. You know, we are experienced and understand issues that arise when you are trying to conduct projects or, you know, implement repairs, obtain access to your systems on federal lands. So we have that kind of experience. Yeah, I think you guys have an extensive system that extends through 5 drainages, you know, all throughout federal lands. So that's something that we kind of.
Yeah, very complicated system. Thank you.
We'll have another question about that coming up.
Okay.
But for now, could you tell us about your most contentious negotiation and how was it resolved? And can you describe your experience with alternative dispute resolution? I figured you could.
And this is 10 points.
Yeah, 10 points. Thank you very much.
So I have found that my most contentious negotiations have been over the abandonment of water rights. And so, you know, the state has the process that comes in every 10 years. And if there is a reduction in diversions or no diversions over that period of time, they can be listed. And then that just creates a presumption of abandonment. And then it gets to what the appropriator's intent is. And you're working up against the state. You feel like the state is all powerful, right? And I have one that's going on up in the Yampa Basin right now. And it was a flood that wiped out this diversion and actually changed the course of the Elk River. And so it wasn't anything that my client had done. It's not like the clients that don't put in the head gates or the measuring devices or record. It's truly an act of nature. And trying to explain, you know, and get the state to see your point of view. So we did in that case, and then I had another abandonment case in the same jurisdiction 10 years ago, very similar, and we did mediation in both. We were unsuccessful in both of those mediations, but we have continued to work with the parties. And so what we do is we were able to stay the trial court deadlines. We have a trial set in June, but we're meeting, all the parties' counsel are meeting twice a week. And it's twice a week because you have to keep people talking. You have to keep people moving. And the problem in this case is that we have a third party where the diversion is located, and there's no trust between these parties. And trust is not something that you can write into an agreement. Trust is something that gets built. And so it's really taking small steps, a small compromise, you know, here and there to see if in the course of doing this, if you can get there. Historically, there has not been a lot of mediation in water court cases because unlike, you know, like domestic cases and such, it was never required. But you're seeing a lot of the judges that retire from water. Judge Oslo did it. Judge from Division 3, O'Hara now from 6 is doing it. So it's actually become an opportunity for us. And so even though the court doesn't require it, we often use that.
I have one follow-up question, if I may. You all had mentioned CDPHE. What's your experience negotiating with them or other state federal agencies on permitting?
I find CDPHE, it is being recorded, right? Very difficult to work with. And it was on behalf of very small water systems. The town of Bristol, which is where my parents live that I represent, 50 taps. And you have a lot of people who are on fixed incomes, a lot of people who are on disability. It's an aged community. They even closed our post office and moved it down the road to another community. And so it's not like you can just go in and, and raise a bunch of tap fees. And so they have had some compliance issues because it's difficult to find someone that can do the testing. So we've had those violations, tests get there late or they get missed. And they give you a compliance plan and it's very, very rigid. And even though there are very helpful people at the state, sometimes it's difficult for them to be able to access that help and to have it in a meaningful way, And so I just wish that they understood that there's a difference between like the big special districts, the United Water and Sand districts that serve millions of people in the Denver metro area versus smaller systems, and to be able to provide additional funding and additional support and additional training for them.
Anything else you wanted to add there? It looked like you were going to speak, so I want to cut you off.
I'll tell you, my most contentious negotiation surrounded a ditch dispute between two private landowners, and I find that it's not that dissimilar from the situation that Sarah described. And I find that when you've got two individuals arguing about private property, that tends to be a different situation to resolve often. One of the things that I like about practicing in water when you get into dispute resolution is that often we are working with the benefit of technical experts, and we don't as often get involved in these disputes between neighbors who are fighting about their individual turf. We usually have the benefit of being able to talk about data and facts, and those disputes become about issues that are more rational and objective rather than subjective. And I think that when we get into dispute resolution in water court matters, when we can sometimes as attorneys, sometimes I think the most effective way for water attorneys to resolve disputes is to get together and have the attorneys have a conversation about what are our clients' particular values and interests, and then to try to relay those values and interests to our technical consultants, and then step back out of the way and let our technical consultants interact with each other as scientists and pull the emotion out of that discussion. And typically those scientists working with the objective data and information can often reach that gulf. So that's how I tend to view ADR and dispute resolution within the water law context specifically. That's how I'd add to that. And I agree, when you're dealing with agencies, whether there's CDPHE, Division of Water Resources, you're working with the U.S. Forest Service on a special use permit to gain access. The agencies are often underfunded, understaffed, and they don't have to do anything for you. They don't have to bend. And so in those circumstances, a week ago I was on the phone with some people from CDPHE, and we had a technical discharge permit violation because we weren't reporting. And we were in a transition period where our client had just acquired a property that has a discharge permit through a bankruptcy proceeding. We don't even have the permit yet because it hasn't been transferred to us by the bankruptcy trustee, but we were being, picked on by CDPHE. And then sometimes in those circumstances, you just need to walk in and say, look, we get it. You guys have the cards. We're trying to do the right thing. Let us help you check the boxes that you need to check, right? Because at some point in time, all of these administrators, they have certain things that they need to do. They need to check their boxes. They need to report up. And so within the dispute resolution context within agencies, I find that sometimes you just seem to let the agency administrators, they also need to show progress. They need to demonstrate success within their arenas. And if you can find a way to help them accomplish certain goals, sometimes they will be a little more flexible and a little more supportive of you in trying to meet your clients' goals and needs as well.
You wanna go?
This way.
All right, so this is our highest scoring question, 25 points. Paonia has been described by a previous water attorney as the most complicated system in terms of water rights in Colorado and perhaps the entire Western United States. What is your experience with advising municipalities that have consecutive water systems and balancing the need to protect the water utility with the needs of consecutive systems?
I think we noted in our response to the RFQ, we don't have any direct experience advising clients that operate consecutive systems. It's not clear to me if the consecutive systems that you're supplying water to are integrated, such that you've also assumed CDPHE compliance authority. You're not, okay.
I do not.
So you are just wholesale.
Correct.
Okay. So you are selling water to these water companies pursuant to your regulations, but those water companies are performing their own compliance with CDPHE. Correct. Okay. So we understand how generally, structurally, what that operation looks like. You're a wholesaler to these separate water companies. And they are operating generally under a master tap agreement. We have experience working through Deep Water and other entities that utilize master taps. So we generally understand how master tap agreements work. And we understand that these water companies are then operating their own public systems, answering to CDPHE. We've reviewed your regulations and generally understand how you're working with these companies and how these companies are responsive to you. We have experience through other clients in negotiating and enforcing the sorts of contractual relationships that you enter into with these water companies in order to implement these wholesale arrangements and enforce the terms and provisions of them in order to operate through these master tap agreements. And I don't know if that fully answers your question, but we don't have any direct experience working through consecutive systems just like yours. I can envision how it works, however.
Well, there is a follow-up question to that, and you did touch on that. And what is your experience with negotiating or renegotiating contracts and agreements? This is specifically with consecutive systems, but you could speak to otherwise. The follow-up question in this regard speaks specifically to one consecutive system that may not want to reopen their 50-plus-year-old agreement, where the town is at.
I'll give you a little more insight. So we have 23 consecutive systems. And these are consecutive systems in that they have a master meter, they have their own ORC, they do their own reporting to CDPHE, they direct bill their own customers, or in some cases rely on the trust of their homeowners to tell them how much water they've used, bill in arrears for the next year. Of those 23 consecutive systems, we might have 11 agreements. One of them, a real agreement that's 50-some years old or close to it. The rest, what they've given us as an agreement might be their bylaws, and that's what they're calling their agreement. All of them have their permits with CDPHE have referenced our system. Our permit have referenced that. So there is some sort of a legal framework, but we don't have agreements in the sense of here are our expectations and what are your expectations for us.
So I have dealt with this in more of an agricultural context, in that we have allowed other water companies to store water in our reservoirs as like a temporary holding, and then they move it on like a reservoir to reservoir exchange. And for many, many years, well, 100 years, it was done under kind of a handshake and a good old boy system. And then we had to spend $10 million, let me get this right, get the right number of zeros, $10 million rebuilding the dam on this reservoir. And then all of a sudden, it really wasn't responsible to the shareholders to just allow other people to use that facility without some sort of an onset. And so right now we're in our 5th year of working through these contracts and telling people, if you're gonna put water here, that's fine, but this is what it's gonna cost you. Trying to figure out how you deal with losses, I'm sure with some of these, it's, system losses, but especially if you are having to upgrade your infrastructure, rehabilitate your spring systems, those contracts really need to be in place. And I think it's also because the world has just changed, right? People just don't shake hands anymore, look each other in the eye and stay with their commitments. And the thing that I think is most important about a contract is it tells everyone what's expected. I have had the cases of anticipatorily breaching a contract that was a bad contract. That means that you say, like, we're gonna get out of it. Let's try to find a way to renegotiate it. If we can't find a way to renegotiate it, then we'll let the court decide, what the problem is. So we've had a lot of those relationships in the water arena.
Can I ask a follow-up to that?
Mhm.
How many entities were you dealing with that you had to come up with those agreements or negotiate with?
So there's about 15.
15.
Yeah, so-
5 years.
Yeah, so
And
down.
you do it individually, like
Mhm.
one at a time.
And why it's taken so long is that we haven't had a really wet year. And so there hasn't been a lot of water to be stored. And so what we're doing is, as someone who's interested in storing, then that's when we go ahead and work on that. And then we also have contracts with Division of Parks and Wildlife, because they also use it as like fishing and recreation and stuff. And those are 25-year contracts that we're renegotiating. And that's kind of like the 50-year, like what was okay 25 years ago is really different. And because they are a public entity, you can ask under the Open Records Act to see what other contracts they've put in place, and you have the same issue, right? If you're not negotiating in darkness. So if you enter into one contract with one of these systems, every other system is going to be able to know exactly what's in that contract. So it puts a lot of pressure on you, I think, in negotiating those first few contracts.
And as a note, we only have 15 minutes left.
Oh,
Okay.
And we're only about halfway through.
Okay, so think of shorter answers.
You good to go?
Oh, good to go.
Yeah,
Question
good to go.
4. The sense of urgency can, at times, compromise thoughtful decision-making and a thorough process. Can you think of a few examples of when this happened? What was your role? For 10 points.
Jeopardy done. Read it one more time, please, Mike.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. The sense of urgency can, at times, compromise thoughtful decision-making and a thorough process. Can you think of a few examples of when this happened? What was your role?
I do think that's a common occurrence, and I think the role of counsel in those circumstances is to simply try to slow that process down. I don't know what else you can do. I mean, the off the cuff answer or idea is thrown out there. You need to listen to it. You need to evaluate it. You need to acknowledge it. And then you try to slow that conversation down long enough to say, yes, I heard you, but let's also consider some alternatives. And given that we have 15 minutes left, I think that's probably the answer to that question.
That's a tough question.
Yeah.
I got a follow-up too, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay,
Wait a minute, Mike, which follow-up are you doing? Not the one on the paper?
you have the one on the paper.
Okay, we have a different follow-up.
Yeah. What's your experience with lobbying? At the state level, yeah. Or
So-
federal level?
So we work with a lobbyist, we don't lobby ourselves. And so we work with Kathleen Curry. She represents Water and a lot of the Grand Valley entities. She has a lot of clients in the Gunnison, yeah.
She ran for office. She
Yes,
did.
yes. So we meet with her weekly. We correspond with her probably 4 out of 5 days a week, or 4 out of 7 days a week during the session. We have tracked legislation, and we have like a tracker of the bills of concern for our clients. And then we also help advise them as to what positions they need to take. So we have actually quite a bit of legislative experience in working with lobbyists. We're also members of the Colorado Water Congress State Affairs Committee that represents a lot of water providers in that arena.
We've assisted in preparing testimony to the legislation, but we are not ourselves lobbyists.
Let's see, Stephanie, you want to
get
go?
the same one I hate. Even though-
That's so funny.
So this was our lowest question, but, and it's a feel-good question, but can you describe an example of a time when your legal opinion helped bring a positive outcome to the community?
5 points.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yep, sorry.
Legal opinion, positive outcome.
I think in represent, like, I was telling you about the violations with that Bristol Water and Sand District. They just didn't have the necessary advice or to be able to understand the community resources that they had. And so what we were able to do is come in, we were able to interface with CDPHE, and then we were able to find an individual that had the intellect and get them the training so that they could do the water testing. We found a retired bookkeeper who could keep their books and make sure that they were in compliance. We were able to identify, and this is a little outside your normal legal arena, but I think you get this a lot more in smaller communities, where we were able to connect the resources that they needed and then help give them the legal framework in order to get back on track and stay compliant moving forward.
Okay, I got one real quick. I recently helped a charter school amend its water supply plan in a way that avoided the construction of expensive on-site storage by using a creative mechanism to, without getting too complex, to use diversion bypass operation to keep water in the stream, to meet downstream senior calls, and again, allowed it to avoid constructing expensive on-site storage.
Sure. Please think of a time when you had to redo a work product because it didn't meet standards. And what was the context and outcome?
I can tell you, it seems like we are reworking work product all the time because we have young associates that we train, right? This is how our firm handles that. If we misunderstood the direction and we didn't answer the question or it wasn't responsive to what the client needs, we don't charge you. If it's something that someone is just learning, then we will also, and that time is unreasonable, we will discount that time. Because what we do is we try to provide services at the individual who's the lowest billing that's qualified to do it. So if we're drafting the first draft of the letter, that will be a paralegal. And then an associate will review it, make sure the substance of it is correct, do the legal research if necessary. And we're really oversight. We're making sure that it's appropriate. I've made mistakes. I've produced something and my client's like, that's not at all what I was talking about. And so then you just say, okay, that's on us. Explain to me what you need, and then we address it. So the thing that I always tell associates, if you make a mistake, the first thing you do is explain to the client. We're all humans, everyone understands, but you get in trouble if you try to hide those mistakes or if you're dishonest about those mistakes.
Nothing to add to that.
He doesn't make mistakes.
No, I am brutal about written product, and my associates, when I bring them stuff, they're always like, "Oh, here we go again." I always tell my associates to review their product as if someone else wrote it, to pretend it's not theirs. And that's how I review my own product. But when I'm reviewing bills and I look at something and I can see that it's gone through someone's hands 2 or 3 times, it's pretty common that I'll just start applying discounts. I want it to be right, but that also has to be done efficiently and economically.
That's how we work. We don't have billing clerks. Each partner that's responsible for a client reviews and sends all bills and answers to them.
You have an excellent follow-up question.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Okay, and I am asking the last question, a 15-pointer. Please describe how many municipalities you are personally representing at this time, and will you have any scheduling conflicts that would require others to serve in your place?
You've kind of answered it with some of your questions, so I mean.
So I can tell you the second Wednesday of the month, we are both committed. I am down in the Lower Arkansas and Chris is with Youth Water. Those are the only standing, appointments that really aren't flexible for me. So I represent quite a few, I'll have to do a number tally. I'd say probably over 10 public entities. But I don't regularly attend all of their meetings. And so I represent Otero County. And so when I'm down for my normal monthly meeting, that second week of the month, I make sure that I can meet with the commissioners and we can talk about whatever issues they have. I do typically drive. It's a 13-hour trip, round trip, every month. Occasionally we will Zoom. But I will say that I really appreciate the face-to-face. I think you lose something over Zoom where you can't see a facial expression, where you don't hear that sidebar that's going on. And so that's really my preference.
Let me just throw one thing in and then Christopher will have you ask. Our trustee meetings are the second and fourth Tuesdays of the month. But that doesn't mean you would necessarily be at one of those meetings. It would depend. I envision our water attorneys being at other meetings primarily, when we start meeting with consecutive systems, et cetera, or meeting with staff on water rights or things like that. But anyway, so I didn't know if that second and fourth Tuesday is an issue for either of you, if we should have you come to one of our regular meetings.
The question is standing meetings, yeah, because Sarah indicated the second Wednesday of every month, I work in Grand Junction with Youth Water. The second Tuesday of every month, I often have a meeting in the evening, starting at 7 p.m. with the Saltwater Conservancy District. I am reaching a point where one of our associates is more regularly managing those meetings. In terms of a total number of government clients, it probably between 6 and 8, but those are the only 2 for which I have a regular monthly commitment. I also prefer to have regular face-to-face contact with clients. I do find it's more effective. I find it's also more enjoyable. So I will be available to be here in Paonia when it's appropriate to have face-to-face conversations and meetings.
We do Zoom too.
Yeah.
So, but you're okay to do that if our budget will allow you to come?
Yeah.
Or if it just works out easier.
I'd like to ask a quick follow-up to that. What is your typical turnaround time if a municipal client were to reach out to you via phone or email? How long?
As far as just a response?
Yes.
Response within 24 hours. Typically the same day, but within 24 hours.
Thank you.
That's the extent of our questions we wanted to ask you. We don't have much time left. We only have 4 minutes, but you are welcome to ask us questions.
I have a question for you. What is it that you like best about your last water chart? I understand it's Sherry Coya, right?
Yeah, right, I answered that, I answered the last one. It was Sherry Coya, so she, obviously she's retired, we gave her the same opportunity because we didn't have an active agreement with her. And I think she's really enjoying retirement. But the best thing that we got from her was setting the foundation for where we are right now. Going for the funding that we've gotten from the Water Authority, the grants that we've received, and scheduling or designing our projects to help with our existing system. But she set the foundation by going through all of our water rights and putting them into what I call a compendium, where she's listed all of our water rights, where we received them from, who gave us what for what. And some of those the most senior water rights go back to 1899. As far as water rights are concerned, we're good with some of our most best performing spring complexes. So that's what we really like.
So would it be fair to say that your first priority really is system improvements so that you can generally more efficiently capture and deliver your water?
I wish I could say that, but I'm running things simultaneously. So while we have this infrastructure need going on, I also have to figure out what our next phase is going to be. And to do that, we have to start getting these agreements in place for our consecutive systems. We have to start seeing what their needs are as well, so that we can start designing our next phase. Because we go to construction this spring with our phase one. So.
Would it be possible if we were hired to be able to kind of take a tour and see the infrastructure in this space? Because I think that if you don't see it, it's much harder to kind of understand what you're dealing with.
Yes, absolutely. We
all should take a tour of the springs.
Yeah, so we even bought new TVs so that we can get up onto our spring complexes to see where our collections start. And then, our water operators love to give people tours. So, just for hiking boots.
Well, and also you are right water engineers, so they encouraged us also to apply because we house in the same building.
Oh.
So we own, the three of us, Scott with us, own the building, and they've rented from us since like the 1970s.
Oh, that's so
And so we've worked with them for a really long time. It's really handy to have an engineer too, because you can go ask questions and be like,
Jonathan's next.
Yeah.
So you know what we're dealing with up there if you talk.
Yes, and we reviewed the presentation that they presented,
Oh,
and
good.
Marshall presented, it was in one of your board packets.
Yeah. So, to get up there, even four-wheel drive vehicles, I guess, are tough to even get up there.
At some point, you has to stop and you have to hike it.
Yeah.
So
I've never been up there. It would be great to do it, but
There are 30 some.
guys aren't insured to sources.
I think we've all tried to do it. There's a local conservation group that tries to get people up there and they've been snowed out or rained out 2 times. So I was gonna go on that, but I really would like to still go, but because we need to see it. It's the most complicated water system in the West, according to Marshall.
Well, being able to see the system in the lay of the land does help a lot. So.
Yeah, we see pictures and we hear the whole infrastructure there.
So I guess you understood what our priorities are then, as far as what we think is most important. The first one is the infrastructure which is being worked on, but secondarily it is getting new agreements and consecutive water.
And I'm glad to hear that, because I was a little worried, because I'm like, we don't really, other than helping to get funding and helping with permitting and that type of thing, interacting with the engineers, that's really an engineering thing. So I was wondering, I'm like, really, your water rights are in good stead, they're not on the abandonment list. I'm like, what are they really looking for? And so negotiating those contracts, it sounds like is a real priority. Yeah. Okay. We're tougher than we want. I'm gonna find something that all the time. They're like, you're too nice. And I'm like, well, I'm nice to you. You're nice.
This will have to be a collaborative effort, big time with all these people that get water from us.
Well, we wish you the best of luck, whether we're the successful candidate or not. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Whoops. Yes, I don't remember that.
Hi, Richard, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can. Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, hello. I'll just start out. I'm the mayor, Paige Smith, and I will introduce our administrator, Stephen Nguyen. I don't know that you can see the clerk on the side, Sam Vetter, and our deputy clerk, Rubens Santiago. And then I'll let the trustees introduce themselves, and then I'll ask you about you.
Great, thank you.
I'm Kathy Swartz, and I'm the mayor pro tem, and I just want to say thanks for spending your evening with us.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Hi, I'm trustee Lucy Hunter.
I can't.
I'm Walter Check.
And we are missing two of our other trustees. One is in Costa Rica,
Oh,
and the other is working. So you have the five of us and three staff. So if you'll tell us a little bit about yourself.
yes, first of all, I wanted to say thank you for letting me appear remotely this evening. I am not adverse to traveling. I have clients in the far southeast corner of the state of Colorado, down in the San Luis Valley, and I travel quite a bit. But I do appreciate the opportunity to appear remotely, and I've got that full access here in my office and in my conference room. So thank you very, very much for that. I appreciate the time saver. A little bit about myself. I am the senior partner here at Moses, Whittemire, Harrison, and Woodruff in Boulder, Colorado. My firm was founded in 1973, so we've been around for about 52 years, and our focus has always and primarily been all about Colorado water rights law. Currently, sorry.
Sorry.
That's okay. Right now we have 5 attorneys here at the firm, 2 partners, myself and my partner Jennifer Delala, and 3 associates. I graduated from the University of Colorado School of Law here in Boulder. I actually went to undergraduate school at the University of Colorado in Boulder as well, and graduated from law school in 2000, and I have been practicing with Moses Whittemire since then for 25 years. I grew up in Southern California and came out here because I love to ski and fell in love with the Rocky Mountains and never looked back. So, so that's why I am still here in Boulder. I've got a wife and I have 3 children. One is a sophomore at the University of Colorado in Boulder. One is just graduating from high school and is going to go to CU in Boulder. And then I've got a 13-year-old daughter. So I've got my hands full with them. But that's a little bit about me, personal, and my legal career.
Thank you very much for that introduction. So we have a series of questions that we will take turns asking you, and we'll let you know how we're scoring each of those questions in terms of the number of points we associate with it, just so you know. And I think Trustee Check is going to take the first question.
The total points, it adds up to 100, but this point is for 20. Please describe your experience addressing issues regarding water rights, water and sewer infrastructure, and water availability for residential users or other pertinent water issues affecting the western slope.
Okay, so I am a water counsel to a number of municipal water suppliers throughout the state of Colorado. The largest municipal water supplier that I represent is the South Adams County Water and Sanitation District. They serve the Commerce City area, population of about 68,000 people. But I also represent a couple of water suppliers not on the Front Range. The city of Creed is a small community not too far away from Paonia there, and I have been working for Creed and representing them with respect to their water rights for a number of years. Actually, my firm has represented them ever since I started here. Also represent the town of Avon there on the western slope with respect to their water rights as well. my water rights experience is extensive on municipal water supply planning. I have prosecuted and completed a number of highly complicated changes of water rights, augmentation plans, adjudications of new water rights, all for the purpose of obtaining, developing new water supplies for my municipal clients. The South Adams County client has a very complex groundwater-based system, which has some relevancy to Paonia's system involving a complex hydrogeology there and springs in the vicinity of Paonia. South Adams is a unique municipality that operates mostly on alluvial wells in the South Platte River Basin. And we had to adjudicate a large augmentation plan. And that case also involved a fair amount of groundwater modeling so that we could better understand the complex hydrogeology of that system. And so I think that experience working in complex hydrogeological systems will be a useful carryover for the work for Paonia. My work for municipal entities has also spanned, doing more of the run-of-the-mill, interconnect agreements, master meter contracts with the city and county of Denver for one of my clients, et cetera. So really run the gamut of on the water rights side. And in terms of other clients of mine on the West Slope there, we also represent the town of Telluride. You probably saw that in my bio. And I have a number of other clients, smaller water providers all along the Front Range, Colorado.
The follow-up is, what did you do to get the information you need and what?
Yeah.
Yeah, I should have deleted this, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I actually got one I like. So tell us about your most contentious negotiation and how it was resolved. In addition, please describe your experience with alternative dispute resolution.
Sure. So I have been through a lot of contentious water court disputes over the years. I have a large amount of experience representing applicants, which can be much different than representing opposers in those cases, because the cases that I'm involved in, for the most part, change cases on the South Platte or in the Arkansas Basin. Many of those cases will have 20, and right now I'm involved in probably what's the largest change of water rights case pending in any Colorado water court on the Arkansas Basin, where we've got about 40 plus parties involved in that case that we will have to negotiate settlements with. But right now, I am in the process of wrapping up a contentious South Platte change case with 25 or so other opposers. And, we've been successful in negotiating those settlements, despite, the fact that this is not always easy. But what I bring to the table is, I think that we approach these settlements, and I really believe, and it's my firm's philosophy, and David Harrison, my mentor here at the firm, always preached this to me, is that you're going to get a better result if you're able to get to a stipulated or a negotiated settlement with the parties to your case or the parties that you are fighting against. You have certainty with the stipulated settlement. And so that's really what my firm and I always strive to do. I think my clients are better served by getting even the most contentious cases settled. Now, having said that, I also have litigation experience. And so I was involved several years ago in a very kind of ugly, contested water court case in Division II, where we had to go to 3 weeks of trial with the Division II water court. My client was called the Lower Arkansas Water Management Association. They are a large group of irrigators in southeastern Colorado. They operate about 600 to 700 high-capacity irrigation wells, and we got in a fight over our plan for augmentation with a large power company and another ditch company. So we ended up spending 3 weeks of trial down in Pueblo, and we're still waiting to get the decision from the water court judge in that case.
That's rough. I have a follow-up question. What is your experience with negotiating with CDPHE or other state federal agencies on permitting?
Yeah, and I didn't pick up on the ADR portion of that, so let me just respond to that first. You know, I have been through alternative dispute resolution in a couple of situations. Several years ago, former Supreme Court Justice Hobbs, who is now passed away a couple of years ago, but he retired from the Supreme Court bench, and he was offering his fine services to help water court applicants and opposers, you know, go through alternative dispute resolution with him. And I went through that in about 2 different cases, and I found that to be pretty helpful. I also am, I think, you know, you also have to recognize when, you know, alternative dispute resolution, you know, is really not in the best interest of your client, you know, maybe financially. Sometimes it can be, you know, a waste of resources. But I think in certain instances, it can be useful, especially where you have a good, you know, mediator or someone running that alternate dispute resolution who's really going to listen and really get involved in the process. And in my experience, you know, tell the clients how strong, how weak their cases are so that they get a little dose of reality. That oftentimes can lead to settlements.
Thank you. And that follow-up is, what is your experience with negotiating with CDPHE or other state federal agencies on permitting?
Yeah, so early on in my career, actually before I started here, I did spend a little bit of time working at the CDPHE as a young attorney. Over the years, you know, I've had an opportunity to interact with the CDPHE primarily in the context of some Superfund and CERCLA issues, so not really permitting per se, but in negotiating, you know, complex resolutions of Superfund cleanup hazardous waste that was impacting my client's groundwater resources. I have also I have a client in the San Luis Valley, the Conejos Water Conservancy District. They own and operate Platoro Reservoir, which is was a Bureau of Reclamation project. And so through that experience, I've had to negotiate with the Bureau of Reclamation on the operation, maintenance, and repair of that reservoir. They had to do some pretty significant repair work several years ago on the penstocks and pipelines, and we had to kind of work through all the permitting for that project with the Bureau of Reclamation, and that was a little contentious because they wanted to do it their way, and my client did not have the budget to do it their way, and so we had to really work hard to find a solution with the Bureau that would give them confidence that we would do the job the right way and that they could come in after the fact and inspect it. But for example, they did not need to have, we weren't going to pay for one of their employees to sit there and watch the company do their work the whole time. So we were able to work through that collaboratively with the Bureau, and that was a pretty successful project. I've had a bit of experience, my firm has, with the Forest Service, you know, working on special use permits and such, and I know that the town has some of those issues and interactions with the Forest Service and likely the BLM, given the location of the springs on public land there. So,
Excellent, thank you.
Question 3. This is the big one, 25 points.
So this question is worth, I guess we should have told you that each question has points associated with it. This is our highest worth question. So it might be the most important one. Sorry.
Paonia has been described by a previous water attorney as the most complicated system in terms of water rights in Colorado and perhaps the entire Western United States. What is your experience with advising municipalities that have consecutive water systems and balancing the need to protect the water utility with the needs of consecutive systems.
Yeah, so as I've said, I have experience with complex water systems. I've had an opportunity to review some information that I found on Paonia's water system, taking a look at some of your decrees, looked at the water moratorium resolution, the recent hydrogeologic report from Wright Water Engineers and a 2020 JDS hydro study. My work for municipal systems involving interconnections, is fairly extensive. As I mentioned to you, I represent a number of municipal water providers. And for one of those clients, the South Adams County Water and Sanitation District, they have a master meter connection with Denver Water. And so we had to negotiate that master meter connection agreement with Denver Water. We also have negotiated and completed interconnect agreements with my municipal clients and other water providers adjacent to them. So that would be very similar to what the town of Paonia has going on here with the water providers that you connect with and that you provide water service to. So, we have worked through those agreements, and we know the types of terms and conditions that the town of Paonia is going to want to include in those agreements to protect the integrity of its water system and to make sure that any risks associated with the use of water that Paonia delivers to those other entities, those connectors, if you will, that is on their risk and not Paonia's.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I have a follow-up question. What is your experience with renegotiating contracts and agreements with consecutive systems that may not want to reopen their 50-plus-year-old agreements?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a bit in terms of, as it mentioned in the RFP, there are some agreements. Some of the consecutive systems you're providing water to maybe don't have agreements. And so that's a difficult situation. I think first you'd want to look and see, what the agreements say themselves, whether they provide terms for renegotiation or reopening those. Ultimately, you're likely going to have to find some leverage to get those entities to bring them to the table to work on revising those agreements. And one way you might be able to do that is through the water supply that you provide to them. So I think that ultimately you want to demonstrate to the parties involved that sitting down at the table is in everybody's interest to bring them to the table. But ultimately, you may have to bring litigation against those consecutive users if you have a claim and under the agreement to do that. For those entities you don't have contracts with, that's going to be tricky, but it just seems like a lot of that is going to be based on what the agreements say.
Thank you.
I got so I just have some follow-up information for you. Like our RFP says, we have 23 consecutive systems. You hit it right on the head. Most of them we don't really have an agreement with, other than they've provided like their bylaws as the agreement. We do have one agreement that's in place that is the real reason for this 50-plus-year-old question. That does need some renegotiating because of some restrictions that CDPHE has put on us. And we're worried about that their hundreds of thousands of dollar problems become our problems. And that's kind of why we're bringing them all to the table. And the process after this is that we plan to bring them to the table after we've secured a water attorney. So, and not to say that that first meeting where we have all of our systems around the table, water attorney comes in, that's not the goal. The goal is to have them around the table, listen to them gripe, get their issues out, and then start working on a way to meet the needs of everyone as best as we can while protecting our system. So I think you hit it on the head. You've heard that we do have agreements. They are good, and we have some with no agreements. So.
Next question, and this one is 10 points. A sense of urgency can at times compromise thoughtful decision-making and a thorough process. Can you think of a few examples of when this has happened and what was your role?
Well, I like to think that I can stay pretty calm, cool, and collected under pressure. And so I think that that's really the key to these negotiations, is to not get emotional, but be able to really get a clear understanding of an agreement upon, the facts and the problem that needs to be solved. So, I can work efficiently and quickly under pressure, for sure. But it just, an example of that is, in litigation, when you're in a courtroom, the things happen, that you're not suspecting, and you have to react and adjust and kind of work through those issues. So you got to be able to think on your feet, but at the same time, stay calm and collected, always focusing on the goal for your client. And here is to, one of the primary goals here is to get these agreements either renegotiated or get agreements in place that both protect the town, but also provide the consecutive users with the certainty they need that they're going to have a water supply going forward.
And then in addition to that, do you have any lobbying experience?
Yes, I do. So I have, wouldn't say it's direct lobbying, but I have represented my clients' interests before the Colorado legislature, and I've also had interactions with federal legislators or their representatives here in Colorado for certain clients of mine. So that would include working with lobbyists fairly extensively over the years, protecting my clients' interest or concerns with legislation at the Colorado legislature. Also a member of the Colorado Water Congress, so we monitor legislation that way. And I have over the years worked on drafting legislation. I have testified before Senate and House committees in opposition to legislation that one of my clients didn't like. And as I said, I've worked with lobbyists over the years on making sure that my clients' interests are made known to the legislators that are going to make decisions on that legislation. In the San Luis Valley, my client, the Conejos Water Conservancy District, has a connection with a federal project that I mentioned, Platoro Reservoir. And so through that, we've also had some interactions with the federal, the offices down in the valley for the federal legislators.
Okay, for this next one, I need you to stay calm, cool, and collected when I ask it. Can you describe an example of a time when your legal opinion helped bring a positive outcome to a community? Thanks for seeing me.
I mean, I see that, I have to say, fairly frequently. One of the things that I really enjoy about my practice are the clients that I get to work with, on the municipal side and also on the agricultural side. I've got a lot of agricultural clients. But on the municipal side, you know, when we're successful in completing, you know, a change of water rights case that's going to provide a water supply to that municipality, you know, into the future, you know, that's really pretty gratifying. A lot of people don't know what water lawyers do, but you know, when you turn your tap on, you can probably thank a water lawyer for a good part of that. There's also a whole team behind those efforts, but you know, it's really satisfying to me to be working with my municipal clients on developing new water supplies for that system so they can meet those demands of their customers going forward. And you know, a number of my clients are what I call, you know, developing districts or clients. They're out there actively adjudicating, pursuing, developing new water supplies because they're not built out yet. You know, they have a lot of growth that's going to occur within that area. And so we are building these water supplies to serve these customers, not just today, but 20, 30 years from now. And that can be pretty gratifying.
Great. Thank you. That was excellent.
Next question is a 15-point question. And it is, please think of a time when you had to redo a work product because it didn't meet standards, and what was the context and outcome?
Well, I'll tell you, my law firm partner here is on her second career as an attorney, and she was an English professor. And so I always thought that I was an excellent writer. But by golly, when we work together on projects, she's always teaching me something new. So, you know, I'm experienced in that kind of constructive criticism, and I take it very well. I know I can learn from other team members, whether they're attorneys, engineers, town managers, et cetera. So, you know, I would just say that, you know, you need to, as an attorney, you know, you have to have some humility and recognize that your work product can benefit from others' input. And I feel like I've got that well handled, and I like to work collaboratively and part of the team and take that constructive criticism, and I can also provide it myself.
Thank you.
Could you please describe how many municipalities you are personally representing at this time? And will you have any scheduling conflicts that would require others to serve in your place?
I'm not aware of any scheduling conflicts now. As I mentioned, I am currently representing the South Adams County Water and Sanitation District. They serve a population of over 68,000 people in the Northeast Denver metro area, the Commerce City area, the town of Avon, the city of Creed. Also represent the Colorado City Metropolitan District. That is a municipal water provider to a community south of Pueblo, Colorado. Also represent the Inverness Water and Sanitation District. They're a municipal water provider in the South Denver metro area. Represent the Genesee Water and Sanitation District. Genesee is a municipal water provider that's located kind of on the west side of Denver, near the town of Morrison that you might be familiar with, in the Bear Creek Basin there. And also represent the Cottonwood Water and Sanitation District, which is another municipal water provider in the South Denver metro area.
And yeah, how many of your clients are statutory towns? And would they have any scheduling conflicts that would require others to serve in your place here?
So I think probably the city of Creed is a statutory town, and that is and probably the town of Avon. The other entities I mentioned are looking at the list here, special districts. So I don't regularly attend the Town of Avon or the City of Creed meetings unless there's a pressing water matter.
The last problem.
Yeah.
Well,
Anybody else have?
Well, I-
Final comment?
yeah, I would like to, could you answer that, the second half of one of the questions, which was, would somebody have to serve in your place? Do you have someone who can serve in your place if you're not available to answer a call or come to a meeting?
Oh, yes, for sure. And so I just didn't hear the last part of that question very well, so I appreciate you repeating that. So yes, my firm and my partner and I do work collaboratively for a number of our clients. And so, I would be able to provide backup representation, whether that's asking my partner, Jennifer Delala, to pinch hit for me. Ms. Delala currently represents the town of Telluride, the town of Frisco, city of Walsenburg, city of Salida, city of Gunnison, town of Frederick, city of Greeley, Winter Park Ranch Water and Sand District, and Silver Creek Water and Sand District. So she would be well situated to pinch hit if needed. And the way my firm also operates is we generally get at least one associate involved with a partner working with each client so that you have redundancy and backup that way. And then there's always someone around to answer a phone call. But I'll tell you, I'm in the office 5 days a week, so I am not a remote worker, and I will do my best to make myself available, as needed.
Richard, can I just ask a clarifying question, because I'm not sure if I heard this correctly? So when you said it's one associate per partner per project, or just you would have one associate working with you on all of those projects?
Typically, it depends on the size of the client and the workload involved, but typically there's a partner, and then we have an associate for each client, so that what we really want to do is we want to have the partner and that associate really be able to work in tandem together and really know and understand that client's water rights. We don't want to spread that work out amongst three associates so they each know a little bit, because in my experience in water rights is it's so complicated and so involved that you really have to have that focus. And the way that we found that works best is to have the partner who really is, has that depth of experience. But where we want to get our associates is so they have that depth of experience so that the clients can reach out to them, directly to have questions answered and work on projects, because that's also more efficient. The associates are billed at a lower rate.
Thank you for clarifying that. That was super helpful.
Okay.
I have a follow-up on that one as well. What is your typical turnaround time in responding to calls and emails?
I would say typically the same day. I mean, I really do try to be responsive. It depends upon my schedule if I'm traveling or whatnot. But yeah, I think being responsive to the clients is of utmost importance, and that's how we're going to get the work done, build quality relationships. And so I really do strive to respond, quickly, and if I can, certainly on the same day.
Thank you.
And I might do a follow-up just on the logistics. So because you're on the Front Range, I would think that most often we would be working with you through Zoom. But traveling, you said in the beginning, traveling is not a problem. But because of the distance, do you feel like you can be as effective through Zoom? If it's us, it's probably one thing, but if there's other public involved in a particular meeting, how do you feel about using Zoom?
Well, I am very comfortable with Zoom, and in fact, but I do fully recognize the importance of being in person at certain meetings. And so we were going to have a public meeting. I would want to be there in person for sure. And again, I don't mind traveling. I have some family over in the West Slope and the Grand Junction area that I could go visit a little more often, but traveling is not a problem. In terms of the effectiveness of Zoom, I'm pretty comfortable with it. It's been both a blessing and a curse. That trial I mentioned in Pueblo for 3 weeks, I actually came down with COVID the second week of trial, and I had to finish the trial through Zoom or through WebEx for 10 days. And that got me pretty well versed in it. I conduct client meetings with my clients in the San Luis Valley and southeastern Colorado regularly through Zoom, and I have observed that we don't even do phone calls anymore. Everything is via Zoom nowadays, so or one of the other platforms. But also recognize the complete need to be there in person at times for those meetings. But if if the weather was such that I just couldn't make it, still comfortable using Zoom.
Great, thank you. If no one else has other questions for you, this is your chance to ask us some questions.
Sure. So one of the questions I had is the RFP mentions kind of 3 categories of work that we have touched on here. Work on the water company agreements, CDPHE compliance and the water tap moratorium. Are there other kind of water rights work? Is the town involved in any opposition cases in the water courts? Or is there any other water rights work that's kind of not within those 3 categories that is pressing for the town to have an attorney attend to? Yes.
Yeah, so we don't have anything in water courts. And I say that kind of facetiously, but it is not yet. There may be in the future, especially with abandonment issues for one of our spring complexes.
Okay.
But we're not there. We're not there. There's no. Yeah, we're not there yet.
Okay. So how do you see the new water council being integrated into the town's team? How do you work with your town attorney, and how do you envision working with the water attorney?
So I talked to our general counsel today, and he said, when you go into law, you can be a general practitioner. You can just do kind of general stuff. But when you go into water, that's kind of what you stick with. So that's not his bailiwick. His bailiwick is more on the general counsel side of things. And knowing that anything related to water, that's what this attorney, that's what we're hiring for. I will tell you that I have from an administrative standpoint, I have a serious need for a water attorney. I have a number of questions related to water rights, consecutive systems, things that we're working on with the state, permitting things. And it's not just drinking water. We do have some permitting issue. General permits with CDPHE for water discharge or effluent water and treatment is a nightmare. And so those are coming too. I see this as being integral to my daily operations, especially with an award of $9.7 million with a $3 million 100% principal loan forgiveness from the water authorities, from CWRPDA, with $1 million and $952,000 2 grants with EIAF, all for improving our water systems. And then all of those agreements that are coming from that. So, we're moving things into our rights of way. We're executing different types of agreements with some of these folks. In some cases, we're even moving from having our water main go through their private properties into right of way, and then they're getting a service line that we're no longer responsible for. And so all of these things have to be worked out. And I plan to break ground in May.
Sounds like, you're planning on having, most likely daily interactions with your water council. And that's the way I work with a number of my clients. We are in meetings talking each and every day, whether it's with the managers directly or with their engineering consultants. I mean, it's all part of that team. And if you didn't kind of get it from what I was saying, I also work extensively with water engineering consultants throughout the state of Colorado. I worked with water engineers with Jonathan Kelly, for example, who I think he's been doing some consulting for the town of Paonia. He also has done some consulting for the town of Avon, so I know him and get along with him. I think he's a great engineer. But yeah, it's that team of you know, the town manager, engineers, attorneys. That's how we're going to get the work done. I don't have any other questions for the town. I know you all have been so nice to wait till kind of late this evening to meet with me. And I really do appreciate the opportunity to meet with the town tonight and talk about, you know, this opportunity. You know, I think one thing that you'll get from me as your attorney is I'm honest. And, you know, I don't sugarcoat things. Oftentimes we're in the business of providing our clients not exactly what they want to hear, but it's that kind of hard truth and legal analysis that's really going to, you know, get these projects done, as opposed to going along with your client who has some idea about, you know, what they should get out of a deal. That, you know, is if I don't think that's really reasonable or we're going to get there, I'll let you know. So I really appreciate the opportunity tonight, and I thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Yep, have a good night.